And on behalf of, good afternoon again. I'm Christine Taylor Lewis. And on behalf of the Afro-American Historical Association of Fauquier County, I thank you all for your support. And I welcome you to this, our fifth in a series of conversations with family historians, others who will talk to us about local history as well as their genealogy. Now, as a part of our mission here at AAHA to collect and document, preserve, and to share U.S. history with an emphasis on African-American experience in Fauquier County, it's our hope that through the social media, such as the Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, and the AAHA webpage, we will keep the latest information available to you, despite the restrictions that we have because of COVID-19. Hopefully, these limitations will be lifted in the very near future. So we encourage you to visit our webpage at aahafauquier.org to learn of our latest events, to take a virtual tour of our museum, to explore our interactive story map of the African-American communities in Fauquier County, in the churches and schools, or to research through our various databases. Now, before introducing our guests, I have two items to cover. Excuse me. First, we at AAHA would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge Women's History Month, which has been set aside to celebrate the contributions of women that have been made to the United States and to recognize the specific achievements women have made over the course of American history in a variety of fields. As stated on the webpage at womenshistory.gov, the origins of a national celebration of Women's History Month goes back to 1981, when Congress authorized and requested that the president proclaim the week beginning March 7, much like this week, 1982, as Women's History Week. In 1987, the National Women's History Project petitioned Congress and succeeded in designating March as Women's History Month. Since 1995, presidents have followed through with series of annual proclamations designating Women's History Month. So I encourage you to visit the webpage, womenshistorymonth.gov, that is womenshistorymonth.gov, for a variety of information related to exhibitions, collections, and events that would be sponsored by such agencies as Library of Congress, the National Archives, Smithsonian Institution, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and many more agencies. Now today, March 8th, is International Women's Day. All week, people across the globe will celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. Today is being set aside to raise awareness of the importance of women's equality and to raise funds to support the women's endeavors. The United Nations in 1975 officially recognized our first International Women's Day. And more than 80 countries are joined worldwide. The 2002 International Women's Day theme is Break the Bias. Break the bias. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to the three phenomenal women who are the brain, the pulse, and the backbone of the African-American Historical Association of Fauquier County. That is Karen White, Angela Davidson, and Norma Logan. It's true that I lend a hand here and there, but Karen, Angela, and Norma have been doing an extraordinary work for decades. So on behalf of our board, our supporters, our family, our friends, I say to you, thank you very much, Karen White, Angela Davidson, and Norma Logan for your commitment and your dedication to the AAHA mission. Let's give them a round of applause. And to all the women out there, have a happy and productive International Women's Day, as well as a fruitful Women's History Week. Now, speaking of phenomenal women, our guest today is Michelle Marie Calhoun, an AAHA board member, a bilingual educator, an author, a poet, a storyteller, a researcher, a podcaster, an international community organizer, a daughter, a mother, and a friend. She will talk to us about making the genealogical connection from the urban to her rural roots. Now, through her podcast called Perpetual Blackness, whose pilot was developed by the WAMU, which is affiliated with the National Public Radio, Michelle shares and parallels the voices of the diaspora's many layers of Blackness as she traces her own family story over 9 generations, from enslavement in rural Virginia to contemporary life in the Washington, D.C. area. Michelle is a native Washingtonian who formerly lived in Miami, Florida for 12 years, where she attended both the University of Miami and Florida International University. In Florida, she taught ESOL and did extensive community outreach. She is the editor of Songs of Yamaya, an anthology hailing Black women's voices. And she is the mother of one clever, even more conscious daughter, Emma Celis Baptiste. Most recently, Michelle works with Afro-Colombian women organizers and leaders in Buenaventura, Colombia in South America. And she's actively seeking to build cross-diasporic relationships with the majority Afro-Colombian cities of Cali and Buenaventura. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. That sounds so fancy over there.
Well, that is who you are, for you are a phenomenal woman. We're among them today.
Yes.
So, and we want to thank you too for joining us today and sharing some of the remarkable work that you have been doing as it relates to genealogy, family history, and the African diaspora. So let us talk just a little about genealogy. And then I would like you to present your story in your own way. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Is that okay? Okay. All right. So generally, our first question is always, what was it that sparked your interest in genealogy?
So first I want to say thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. I'm almost like, who are we talking about? Is that me? So thank you. That was very, very nice. So I would say that maybe the seeds of my interest in genealogy really started with my great aunts. I grew up in PG County, Prince George's County, and I had 4 great aunts who helped raise me. They were from North Carolina, actually. This is on my father's side. My mother's father's side, my mother's paternal line. And they always told me stories about what life was like growing up in the 30s and 40s in North Carolina. And I love them so much. Everything they told me, I kind of just recorded in my head, even though growing up in the 80s and 90s, I didn't really know the value of it. I just knew I valued them. So I always credit them with really my initial interest in anything genealogical or anything dealing with Blackness, because they were my first lens of looking back. So I think those seeds were way planted way before I
Yes.
actually started the actual journey.
Yeah, long before. I remember having listened to your podcast, and one of the statements you made that stands out is that we are the latest version of our ancestors. So it's through your ancestors that you got this great knowledge and wisdom and the desire to do your genealogy. So thank you. Okay.
And I think a little bit about it is being raised by, older people. I think it helped me to always treasure their voices. I don't think I
Yes.
came to appreciate that until much later.
Yeah.
I think until I connected with AAHA, I didn't see that full circle coming back around until that point in my life. But
Okay.
I definitely was kind of keen into what do the elders have to say? What were they telling me? 'Cause I
Right.
grew up-
Yes. There's such wisdom. Michelle, I'm being told that everybody can't hear you loudly. Can you turn
Oh.
up your volume, please?
Absolutely. Okay. Let's do a little test here. Can you hear me better? I just turned up the volume.
I hear you better, but I'm told that others in this office. So if not, we'll learn.
Okay, let me see what I can do here.
Do you hear okay, Karen?
Not too well.
Oh, okay, not too well. Let's see here what I can do. I'm gonna try again. If not, maybe we could take a quick intercession. I could throw in some headphones.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you think that would work?
I think that would. That would.
Okay.
Maybe Karen can keep us abreast.
Okay, beautiful. So what I'm gonna do, if we could just take a quick 2 seconds and then I can switch out so the sound might be stronger.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
When I cut my volume up, I can hear Nichelle very well, but then you project overly loud. So I can't get a balance between the two.
Okay. Thank you. Then you sound loud yourself.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle.
Is everyone hearing me okay now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear better, Karen?
Mhm.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so how long have you been doing your research?
So I'm gonna actually, I think I'll share from this point a little bit and start telling a little bit about my journey in particular.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna go kind of the roundabout way. Many of you from the Piedmont probably recognize where this is. This is in Rappahannock County down in Virginia. So I'm gonna say officially my genealogy search, I began about 2000. I was dibbling and dabbling. I think we all do that per se, right? Like I was looking things up in 2015 and just kind of starting to look at my name, my family name in Ancestry. But I wasn't deep into the journey until about, I would say about 2016, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she became really ill. And I was visiting from Miami, Florida to visit her in the nursing home. And I saw that she had this picture. She had a picture of her parents in her hospital room. And I'm gonna share that picture with you if I can move forward. Let's see. 1 second, everyone. Without interference. Without interference. Yes.
I'm having trouble with hearing. I'm quite
Oh,
sorry. Okay,
yes.
that's better.
Can you still hear me?
Now, yes, that's better.
Okay, so she had this picture here in her hospital room, and these were her parents. And it was at that moment that I realized I had never really seen a picture that old before. I was probably about 35 or 36. And I was like, wow, this is the oldest picture I've seen of anyone. And I didn't really know my grandmother very well. I knew her name, I knew who she was, but I hadn't spent a lot of time with her. So I definitely didn't know anything about her parents or where she was from. But as she was sick, I became more interested in like, well, what is my grandmother's story?
Yeah.
Who is she? And so I took a picture of it, and I remembered, I asked my grandmother, I said, Grandma, where are you from? And she said, Warrenton. And I was like, I don't even know where Warrenton is. So I Googled Warrenton, and Fauquier County came up. And so when I saw Fauquier County, I said, well, let me look for the Fauquier County Historical Society. So I looked for the Fauquier County Historical Society or something of that nature. And I called them. And I said I had this picture that my grandmother was from this area, and that's all I knew. And I'd be interested in donating a digital copy. And they were said, well, do you know about the Afro-American Historical Association of Fauquier County? I said, no, I just learned Fauquier County today. And so I called over to AAHA, and the person who picked up the phone was Norma Logan. And she asked me, she said, well, what's your family's, last names? I said, well, my grandmother's was Smoots, and I think Bostons and Baileys. And she said, that's my family line.
Awesome.
Like that. I was living in Miami, so I was very disconnected from, I didn't know anything about Fauquier County. I really, when my grandmother said Warrenton, I had to Google what county that was.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sparked my interest because immediately I decided the next time I returned to the DC area to visit my family, that I would come out to AHA. I wanted to see AHA. And I remember I was so nervous to go. Karen may not know this, but I was so nervous to go that first time because I had never seen an organization like it. I didn't know that existed. And so here I went from knowing nothing, hardly anything about my grandmother to like, oh yes, we have this whole archive about Fauquier County and the Black.
Awesome.
So I hit the jackpot, basically.
Yes, you did. And you learned that Norma was your cousin.
I learned that she was my cousin, and we began texting, and she began sending me some photos. So this photo I did have, but I didn't know really.
Beautiful.
I didn't know much about them. So this is Joseph Smoot,
Okay.
and this is Rachel Smoot. Her maiden name is Bailey. These are my great grandparents, and they were from the community of Waterloo, which I also did not know anything about either, of course. And so this really started my journey in communicating with my cousin now. I'm so sorry. I'm at school, so you're going to hear a bell. I'm a teacher, everybody, so you're going to hear that bell. Sorry about that. And so I started communicating with Muffy and speaking to Karen, and she was kind of pointing me into different directions. And that really started the journey off.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So when you talk about your genealogy going back 9 generations, are those generations leading back to your roots in Waterloo or North Carolina, or PG County, or can you talk more about that?
Sure, I'm gonna walk us back a little bit, and I just want to make sure I'm still audible. So please let me know if I need to.
I'll just do this.
Okay,
Thank you.
So I'm gonna walk us back. I want to show first a picture of my grandmother. I see the screen is moving a little slow. Let's go back.
While you're setting it up, do you know how old this picture was?
Yes, this is 1921.
Yeah. 19. Thank you. Wow.
And hopefully the image has changed. Sometimes I'm not sure why it's a little delay. But here's my grandmother, Lillian Smoot. And so one of the things that struck me is like, when you meet your grandparents, right, they're already older. Here she's 21 in this picture, and she looks a lot like my own mother. So I'm gonna start with that. So we talked about these 9 generations.
Yeah.
And here you can see, this is my daughter, Emma, myself, my mother, Jacqueline Calhoun, her maiden name is McLean. And there's my grandmother. She's the one who starts me off with that. I'm from Warrenton. She starts me off with that. And her mother here, Rachel Bailey. And this has twins here. You can't see with the candles. She has these 2 twins, and my grandmother was a twin, which I also did not know. She was, her twin sister was Lydia. And then going back even further, going to that next generation, would be my second great grandmother, which is Mary Lawson. She was a Lawson. She was born in Rappahannock County. She married a Bailey, which is why my great grandmother became a Bailey. And then later, she married a Smoot. And so she connects the 3 families, the Baileys and the Lawsons of the Smoots of Waterloo. Grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother married brothers.
Okay.
And so that's an interesting fun fact. And then going back another generation, is my 3rd great-grandmother, born in 1848 in Rappahannock County, Virginia. And then I'm going back 2 more generations, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So here's 1848, there's 1870s, late 1890s, and coming down. So I'm gonna start here with Frances Lawson, born in Rappahannock. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. There's me with Karen. This is like one of my favorite photos of all time, because she's literally showing me my way back.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome. Beautiful.
I want to say, stopping here, before then, growing up in Prince George's County and being born in DC, I thought of myself very much as a forgive me, that's the bell.
That's okay.
I thought of myself very much as a Washingtonian, right? I thought of myself as a Washingtonian. I never really thought about Virginia. This research in this genealogy put me really firmly back into being a Virginia daughter and feeling really a part of the first people of Virginia. And I didn't have that gaze. And I think that's why I love this picture so much, because it was through this research, through AAHA, I became really American in a way, and Virginian.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip ahead to, so this is going back to 1848. I was able to trace back to Frances Lawson. She was born in Rappahannock County. She was a free woman. She was a free woman. I did not know that my family had free members. How I came to know that is she showed up on that census. She showed up on the 1850 census with her father and her mother. And so she was free. I don't think I understood that at first, but as I began to see, Frances Lawson's father, John Lawson, was a landowner in the 1850s. And after the Civil War, I see him on the census owning about $3,000 in property. So that was really, really interesting to me, because I don't think I had envisioned a free past. I had only envisioned an enslaved past. And so that was really, really kind of mind-changing. So Frances Lawson, who is the mother of Mary Lawson, the one who unites the 3 families in Waterloo, it's interesting. When I first saw this picture of Mary Lawson, I said, oh, she doesn't look so like me. I thought that she was quite fair in complexion. A lot of my family members are also quite fair in complexion. I was kind of one of the browner people in my family line. So I was really intrigued by that because I didn't know really anything about, you know, what the admixture was and who was who. But as I was doing research on Mary Lawson, I found out that her father was actually a white hotel owner in Rappahannock County.
Hmm.
This was not well known in my family. However, I got a copy of that marriage certificate. Mary Lawson's marriage certificate to my second great grandfather revealed her father's name. Excuse me, it's going to be okay, sorry about that. So it revealed her father's name. And what that told me was, excuse me, sorry, let me mute for 1 second.
I thought we had picked some of those seeds and put in one of the containers down there in the bottom. Did you see any of them? Oh, right. Okay.
That was one of those announcements I chimed in. So what was interesting to me was that the father was listed on her marriage certificate in Culpeper, where she got married to Henry Bailey, who was of Waterloo. And so when I started to look for him by name on the census, he was James Woodward. And I couldn't find any Black James Woodwards. I was like, where's this James Woodward? Where is he? I can't find him. Well, the reason why I didn't was because he was actually a white man. And so actually that wasn't even well known in my family that he was. So I was kind of taking that information back. So I was really interested in their relationship, excuse me, his relationship with my third great grandmother, because he was listed on the marriage certificate. And this was 1890, I would say 1896, which I think is about the same time as Plessy versus Ferguson. And so that opened up some other questions, right? Because now there's this white paternal ancestor with more documentation. And so I'll come back to that, but that was one of the surprises and one of the shocks. And I'm trying to change my screen, so give me 1 second. So I was wondering, how did Frances Lawson, my third great grandmother, really get into a relationship with this John Woodward, right?
Oh.
That was one of the big questions. And I want to stop just in case you had a question. I think you were about to say something. No? Okay. And so as I was looking more into Frances Lawson, I learned about John Lawson, and I'm going to skip ahead to the Free Negro Register. And here is how I found out for sure that my family was actually free. This was through, I forgot what you call it. Maybe you can help me. What do you call it when they, is it transcribed?
Abstracted.
Abstracted, that's the word. An abstraction of the original Free Negro Register. So this would be my third great grandmother's father, John Lawson, right? It shows that he was freeborn. And then I see that he's registered in Stafford County, Virginia. So this is a new county. I didn't know about that. And it mentions that he's the son of Betty Lawson. So that gave me that next generation back, right? So now I'm like, oh, John Lawson is the son of Betty Lawson. And that takes me back to my oldest person that I have traced back to. So that was the key. And this was at AAHA. And so this was very, very key. He's 22 at the time, 5'9" and 5'8" inches, very dark mulatto with short woolly hair, scar on the right wrist. I really held on to this because as Karen, had spoken to me and shared with me before, that during this time, this was like the license, right? This was the way for people to identify Black people who were free. And in today's time, it's kind of like a double-edged sword because at that time, this was a way to control Blacks. But now at least I have a picture, a little something to imagine someone that I would not normally have an idea what they look like. And so that takes me one generation back, and it also gives me a new location, Stafford County. So tracing back, I'm born in Washington, D.C. My mother's born in Washington, D.C. My grandmother is born in Fauquier County in Waterloo. Her mother is born in Waterloo. Going back, her mother is born in Rappahannock. Excuse me, it is Woodville, I believe, Woodville, Rappahannock. Her grandmother is born in Woodville, Rappahannock, and now my fourth great grandfather is born in Stafford County.
Wait a minute.
So I drive down to Stafford County, meet with the Historical Society down there. And now I'm on the trail of, I want to know more about Betty Lawson. So I'm going to go back to my Betty Lawson. Excuse me, I'm looking for her. Where is she? And sorry, these are all of the other Lawsons that are also listed as free, that are the children of Betty Lawson as well. Right? And so you have their descriptions. So I head down to Stafford County. I tried to find out why Betty Lawson is freed. I find out that she is freed at the age of 38. And the funny thing was, at that moment that I was doing this research, I was 38. It was such like a moment of, And what was interesting also was, and I'm looking for my Betty Lawson record. I'm sorry if I cut her out. Sorry, I must have cut her out of this one. But in her Free Negro register, she is listed as 5'1". Guess who's 5'1"? 5'1", dark skin with woolly hair. So I'm like, oh my gosh, and she's 38. So I felt this really, really, really strong connection to Betty Lawson of Stafford County.
So you're the latest version of Betty Lawson.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Go on, Betty.
And ever since,
That's beautiful.
It was such a serendipitous, poetic moment.
Yeah,
She was me.
Yes, she is. Yes.
She is, exactly. And so now it also intrigued me because Stafford County is literally from where I grew up, 60, 70 miles. And so really thinking about a Black family traveling really
that's
not
right.
that far
Yes.
over
Yes.
250 years.
Yes, that's
Right?
right.
Like straight up the Rappahannock River. Right? From Stafford County, from Fredericksburg, up to Rappahannock, into Culpeper. Some of my family is in Culpeper, and into Fauquier, into Waterloo. So it was definitely, and then of course on to Washington, D.C. So when I was talking about those generations, that was the exact journey. I'm going to go back. That was the exact journey that I was looking up. So Rappahannock River, Stafford County, Culpeper, Rappahannock County, and Fauquier are my ancestral homes.
Yes. Beautiful. Awesome.
And so that put me firmly into the late 1700s. What I could find out about Betty Lawson was that she was freed at 38. She had married a George Lawson. This is my hypothesis, which is where the Lawson name comes into when she is free. At some point, she moves to Rappahannock County with some of her already born free children and raises them there and puts my family on this line, I guess, this trajectory to freedom in 1808. So we're talking a good, 50 something years before the end of slavery. That was a big shock to me. A big shock to me.
Awesome.
And I can continue. I don't know if you had another question, so that's why I paused.
You're doing great.
Another thing that wonder if you notice is that my work really centers around women. I was very interested in women, shout out International Women's Day, because women are often doubly invisible. Black women are doubly invisible in the record, right? And so I didn't spend much time researching the men in my life. They were kind of tangential for once, right? My interest was really in the ladies, in what their lives look. Okay, sorry, I hear that louder. So my interest was really in ladies because so much of our lives was even more invisible, and the men, for once, took the back seat in my research. And that's kind of in the work that I do. It's a lot of focus on Black women. I'm very interested in how Black women's lives are in different points in time in history until now. So I'm going to skip a little ahead, and I'm going to go on to Waterloo. So those are my roots, Stafford
Thank
County.
you. Yes.
Those are my roots, Stafford County, bringing it on up to Waterloo. Unfortunately, I had been to Waterloo once when I was 16, but I didn't know that. I had come for a family funeral, but I didn't remember until I started the actual journey when I moved from Miami and started doing research with AAHA. I left AAHA one day with the directions of Karen and Muffy, Norma Logan. I left with those directions and I was driving and everything looked so exotic to me. I remember I was like, oh my gosh, this is Fauquier County. I'm driving Fauquier County. And I get to a little white church at the corner of the road. I get out. And that particular day, I brought a friend with me who was a photographer. And we stopped in the parking lot. And there was an older gentleman in the parking lot. And my friend was like, go talk to him, go talk to him. And I was still a little bit nervous because I was like, this is weird. I'm just going to walk up and start asking him questions. And I walked up to him and I was like, hi, you know, I think my family's from this church in this area. And I just had a couple questions. Well, he too was family. He was Deacon Sanker. Like, okay, every time I talk to someone in Fauquier, I'm related. This is good.
Awesome. That's the way it is in Fauquier.
I realized that, and it's great. So I started asking him questions. I said, well, why do they call it Waterloo? I'm really curious. It's interesting. He said, because every time you dig down, you hit water. And I was like, okay, that's a good one. I like that. So at the time, I'm going to go back to the original picture. I was really interested in Joseph Smoot and Miss Rachel Bailey, my great-grandparents. And so he showed me where they were buried. By this time, my grandmother had passed on. She died in June 2017. This was September 2017 when I first moved from Miami. And so he showed me where they were buried, and he showed me where my great-grandmother was buried, she's buried right in front of them. And he says to me, and their daughter lives up the street. And I'm like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I hit the jackpot again. So the daughter would be my grandmother's sister. However, I didn't know her. I didn't know her very well. And I'm going to skip down. And so here she is. Here is the daughter, who is my great aunt, Rachel Smoot. She's named after her own mother. And she is the last, she just passed in January. She was the last of the 11 children. And from that moment of connecting with AHA, when we started to listen to Community Speaks, I began to not only know who she was, but stay in her home, which was built by my great-grandfather, and sit and record her stories of my family. And this went on for 3 years, that I sat with her, recorded her voice and her stories. And I went from not knowing my grandmother to knowing all types of beautiful details that I'm now sharing with my immediate family. And so the journey was more than just genealogical. It was extremely personal, extremely personal. I gained a whole family, really and truly.
Yes.
And I'm only stopping and pausing for questions, but also a lot of healing because my own mother was not connected. She wasn't raised by her own mother. So she gained an aunt. It was really a lot of bridging done with this genealogical research. And so this is in the Church of Waterloo. We're sitting here. As she would joke and say to me, "You always want to talk about the past."
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
happily obliged. And so that brings us to Waterloo. And I'm not sure if you can see this picture quite well. It's a picture of a picture. This is the first congregation of Waterloo. The church was founded in the 1880s. But before, they had services in the outdoors. I guess they call them brush harbors.
Harvard, yes. Mhm.
Up a little bit, brush harbors. And so these were the first attendees. And so many of them are actually family members.
Beautiful,
And
beautiful.
buried in that very sacred ancestral space behind what.
So being a teacher, did you know that the Waterloo School Church was used as a school?
Me?
Did you know that? Yes.
No.
That the church in Waterloo at a point was used as a school?
Yes, I came to know that as I started doing the interviews with my great aunt because she had attended that school. She started off first in Turnbull.
Yeah.
And then later on, they attended Waterloo for school. Yes.
Yes. And it's my understanding that on Fridays, the teachers would change the furniture, the chat desk and move them around so that a church could be made in that area.
Absolutely.
And then after service on Sunday, they would change it back so that the children could use it as a school. That's just marvelous, the way the church and the community work together and come together.
I think that is so well said, exactly. And that was something that else was very striking for me.
Mm-hmm.
Stories is that I think growing up in school, they talk a lot about New England communities, right? Where you had the church was the center of life, and then people lived around the church and people built their homes. And I love how an AAHA was like, was it primer, pulpit, hurt?
Yes,
right?
that's right. Yes.
With that, it made me think, oh, Black communities, they had a very strategic organization in which they live their lives.
Yes.
And we don't learn about that. I learned to exalt the New England community and democracy, but really Black communities use that same structure. They always were with their ancestors, where they buried their ancestors, they built their church, there was a school, and they build their communities around that. And that was really uplifting for me. I had never had that understanding.
Beautiful. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sharing another image, one of the images from my great-grandparents and some of their older, the first set. I like how they say, oh, the first set, the older set, and the second set. And Rachel Bailey and some of the older children. So one of the stories I was very interested in what kind of family, what kind of people they were. That was my anthropology background. Very interested in ethnography, in what people are like. So one of my favorite things that my Aunt Rachel would tell me was that Joseph Smith was very, very kind. He was a good man. And in the community, people came to him for all types of problem solving. And she said, family really didn't even know that until he had passed in 1959. all the things he had done, lending money and doing things to support the community. He was just a very humble man. He passed away working in the fields. He was working, he had a heart attack in the cornfields. So she always spoke of him as being very gentle and kind. She said her mother was more of the, fire and brimstone a little bit more. However, she had this very fun thing that she used to do on Sundays. Joseph Smoot, my great grandfather, would want her to read the newspaper and comics. And so every Sunday she would read the comics for the family and she would imitate all the voices.
Oh my.
That was his favorite thing, and they would crack up. Well, that's something that means so much to me because my grandmother was hilarious. One of the things I do know is she's a funny woman.
Yeah.
Her timing was impeccable. And my Aunt Rachel was similar.
Yes.
When I heard that story, I said, that's where it comes from. That's that comedy, that quickness, that ability
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Again,
Yeah, it's better. It's better.
about what year would you estimate this one was taken,
I would think in the
Michelle?
about the late 1920s. Because most
Late
of their
20s?
1920s, yeah. Because most of their children,
Mhm.
half of the first set is born. Like my grandmother is not here. And so she was born in 29. So it should be probably a little, maybe late 1920s.
Thank you.
Michelle, can you talk about where you got all these wonderful pictures? I mean, it's one thing to have a record, but you have pictures.
Well, I have to credit my Aunt Rachel here. When she knew that every time she saw me, we were going to talk about 1925, she always would pull pictures for me. She would have things waiting for me. I'm going to see if, for example, she would pull, she would pull Bible records for me to look at. This is actually from the family Bible. She would pull pictures, report cards. She'd have them waiting for me. And a lot of these things, let me see if I have this is my grandmother's graduation diploma from 1948.
Look.
She would have these things waiting for me. Yes. We would.
Rosenwald.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. That's fabulous. Fabulous.
And that's the historic Rosenwald School.
Yes, she graduated from, let me see if I have that picture there. Also, I'm gonna switch over if I can quickly to my actual, if you go to the website, my Perpetual Blackness website, you will see not only the podcast, but you'll see a lot of what I'm referencing in these earlier posts. I'm gonna just load more. And this parallels my family's journey, right? Each episode, if you're interested. There's Muffy. And so if you go through, you'll see a lot of these awesome references. Here's the Rosenwald image. I think that many of us are familiar with, and a little bit about my family's interaction with Rosenwald. But here, if you can see here, this is my report card. Okay.
Look at that. 1946.
So yes, a lot of these beautiful items came from really connecting with family members, my Aunt Rachel in particular, but some of the other elders in my family as well. There she is.
Yes, yes. I had the opportunity to talk to her when we were working on the story map, and I needed information about Waterloo. And from the moment we talked, we just developed the most wonderful relationship. And she is just so witty and so full of fun.
Oh,
Her pastor told me when I called him to see if he would give me her telephone number, that he calls her the mayor of Waterloo. So I called her Madam Mayor. And she just loved it. She just loved it.
oh, I know she did. I miss the mayor. The mayor,
Yeah, beautiful spirit.
beautiful, beautiful spirit. I
And
do
you
want
live
to
through her as well.
thank
You
you so
do.
much.
You do.
We definitely bonded, and that is the thing. I think that's the point of genealogy, right? We think that sometimes we're interacting with documents, but what
Yes.
we really interact with is ourselves and in our family. And sometimes there's just questions they haven't been asked, or stories that they've told to their brothers and sisters, or that they've lived with other people, but they have gone
Yes.
on. So it really gives an opportunity to make those intergenerational connections. I do want to share, before the time runs too short, this was one of my favorite things that she had waiting for me, is this jar here. I'm going to click on. This jar is a jar of canned fruit, I believe blackberries, if I can remember, that my my second great grandmother canned in 1932.
Wow.
My aunt Rachel, my great aunt Rachel, had been holding on to that canned jar because she canned it the day my great aunt Rachel was born.
Yeah. Mercy.
So she keeps that in her kitchen as she called it a show thing, right?
Yeah, I'd show it too. It's beautiful. That's just marvelous. Mm.
So yeah, so there's so many stories that came and arose from my research in genealogy. Learned about a great uncle who was actually the top, he was the top, the horseman. I got to think of he was one of the top horsemen at the time.
Okay.
Groomer or trainer?
He was a jockey. He was one of the top top jockeys of his time. His name was Charlie Smoot. And so you can find him here. Here it is. Charlie Smoot is a picture of him in one of my episodes. Let me see if I have it all lashed out right here. I found articles about him in the Times. And I mean, I just
Julia.
know. And so it was pretty interesting to not only trace back, but learn these individual stories.
It's marvelous. Mm.
And so a lot of this, I feel like even, I've kind of thought about how does the work change, since my Aunt Rachel has passed on, right? This is one of the things I've been also kind of processing, because when I come to Fauquier, my mind was AAHA and my great Aunt Rachel.
Yes.
And so I haven't been back since her funeral, but next week, March 19th, we're going to go through many of these things and out stories with my family.
That's absolutely marvelous. Nichelle, we thank you so much. For you are not only a phenomenal woman, but you have a phenomenal story to tell, a phenomenal history. And I'm sure that many of us who are listening can relate to some of the people that you talked to and the names that you mentioned, Baileys, the Baileys, Lawson, Smoots. They're very common names. There's a Lawson on my street in Haiti. There's a Smoot on my street in Haiti. I'm sure they were your relatives.
I'm sure.
So not only are you making a connection, but we are all making a connection to you. And that's a mighty blessing. It truly is. And On behalf of AAHA, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time out, even while you're on your job, you know, to be able to spend this time with us. It's just a marvelous thing. And it was an exceptional story of your life. And we truly, truly appreciate your presence. And
But thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like I owe so much in so many ways. I don't know if I've expressed, because I gained a whole family and I've gained a whole connection with not only the Baileys, Lawsons, and the Smooths, but through AAHA and through Fauquier County. I do really feel like I'm related to everybody.
and you are.
I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I know they're gonna be my cousin.
That's right.
And that is a blessing coming from a girl who didn't really even know her grandmother.
Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful. And also just making that international connection. Now that I do some side work in Colombia, in rural areas, I think about the lessons learned in AAHA, right? I'm like, where's the church?
Yes.
Where's the cemetery, right? And
Where's the school?
that's where you find the center of Black life is the spirituality. It's always a compass. And so the ancestors always lead us where we need to go. And I'm thankful for this journey. And I'm thankful for AAHA and thankful for Karen, for you, for Muffy, for Angela, have been extreme blessings in my life and an opportunity to share. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. We truly do. And we want to thank everyone for joining us here today. It's been a marvelous, marvelous International Women's Day. But we have an international woman here, a phenomenal woman. Yes. And we truly, truly appreciate your presence. And we will be back here on the 22nd of March when we will talk to Jim Striblin and Darlene Green about their mutual connection in trying to find their own personal histories. One is from a line of landholders, and others is from a line of slaves. And in searching their stories, they find that they have a very, very, very common and special bond. So we hope that you will look forward to joining us again on March 22nd. So thank you again, and God bless all the women out there. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. It was something good. Thank you. So I'm going to close out.
Okay.
If I can figure out how. Well, shit, it's just beautiful, just beautiful.
Did it work out? Oh, I think my cousin's on here.
All right. You can say hi to your cousin.
Patsy, is that you?
Hi, Michelle. Yeah, it was great. I enjoyed your talk.
That is the true, that is the historian of the Losses and Smooths. And actually, I'm sorry, Patsy, I was remiss to say that you have shared a lot of photos and information. I wish I had realized you were on here.
Oh, no, I'm just really happy for you. I enjoyed your presentation. And actually, we're gonna get ready. I'm getting ready to join the DAR. So we are descendants of the DAR.
Awesome.
Oh.
Awesome. Beautiful.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. Yes, she has done so much work in our family line. So you can have another one with her doing genealogy.
So what's Patsy's last name?
Jones.
Patsy Jones.
Yeah, my mom is June Smoot Jones.
Okay.
Okay, train. I don't know. You
June
got
Smoot.
June Smoot. Yeah, she actually went to Rosenwald, but in elementary, and she also went to Waterloo
Yeah.
School.
The name is